Hello everybody, Double Shine here. You might have seen me from my coverage of Leagues, the seasonal mode in old school RuneScape, but today I want to talk about a new trend that's actually been happening where a lot of WoW streamers are actually trying out old school RuneScape for the first time. And I've seen some discussion of an OnlyFangs style content creator guild inside of old school RuneScape and what that might look like. And I just want to share my thoughts and give some insight as somebody who has played both games extensively. Currently, I'm working on a hardcore Ironman in old school RuneScape, basically a solo self-found where I can't trade with other players, and it's a hardcore. So if I die, I lose that status, and I'm basically demoted to a regular Ironman. And earlier this year, I also hit level 60 in the hardcore classic WoW servers. I also died at level 58. That was pretty tragic. So if you're not familiar, OnlyFangs was a content creator guild in WoW for the new hardcore servers that was largely put together by Sodapoppin and Mizkif, and it really brought together a ton of content creators from a lot of different genres and a lot of different communities. It kind of felt like a streaming crossover event. You had YouTubers and stuff. Like it was pretty cool to see. Overall, I think it was a pretty massive success. And I think for a lot of people, seeing so many of the same players that were such a core part of the OnlyFangs team now trying out old school RuneScape, it does kind of beg the question if, maybe there's a chance of that happening here as well. And even if you're just a WoW player who's trying out old school RuneScape for the first time, I think this video should give some interesting discussion and a little bit of perspective that might kind of, give you some information before you start out your journey. Okay, so there's a couple differences with old school RuneScape that I think are really important to kind of talk about. First up, old school RuneScape is a very grindy game. Now, I'm sure if you've ever played old school RuneScape or even probably heard about old school RuneScape, you probably know that. But I don't think people really understand that it is a really grindy game. For context, hitting max level in Classic WoW takes somewhere between 100 to 150 hours, just depending on personal skill level and how focused you are playing the game. This is a character that I worked on last year, and you can take a look at my stats here. I'm a little bit short of 1700 total level. I have around base 70s in almost everything. I have almost every quest completed. There's a couple of the really pinnacle level quests, and I have all the requirements. I just had to go and do them. And not too many actual boss grinds. The only thing I did was Moons of Peril, got every item there. So that's about it. Now, before I reveal how many hours I have on this account, I want you to just kind of take a second and think about it. And so that total number, if I talk to this guy right here, is 24 days and 9 hours. So I'm a little short of 600 hours played on this account. And I would say that this is pretty comparable to what level 60 is in Classic WoW in terms of account progression and where you are as far as the rest of the game opening up. And just to be clear, I am nowhere near max in any of these skills. It is still miles away. That being said, you don't really need to max an old school RuneScape. It's not really that important. Around base 70s is usually enough to kind of get you into the game. Now, that's not to say that old school RuneScape is inferior because it has a longer grind. For a lot of people, they really like the grind. And a lot of these grinds are pretty mindless and pretty menial. They don't really require a lot of focus. And that's kind of why the game is known as something that can be done on your second monitor. Again, it didn't take a lot of effort for me to AFK mining to 70. That's kind of just something I would click on every couple of minutes and go back to watching a movie or doing whatever else I was doing. However, I do think that for people who are getting into the game, they might not realize just how grindy many aspects of this game are, especially as an Iron Man where you have to supply all your own resources and grind out all your drops. The game just was not really designed with that in mind. And most of the grinds are intentionally very, very long because you're sort of expected to trade with other players to get items, not really go and get them all on your own. I don't really like that philosophy, but that is what the game was built on. So yeah, please understand that. I think especially in the context of something like OnlyFangs, it would be very difficult to get a bunch of new content creators to sort of drop what they're doing and then spend, hundreds of hours just to sort of get an account online where you can engage with a lot of the content that's actually there. If you're wondering how old school RuneScape streamers do it, Again, a lot of it is just stuff that you can do kind of on the side or on your phone while you're engaging with other stuff. And then many old school RuneScape content creators do actually have like friends or family members that will basically level their account for them, so that they can get to the good stuff, so to speak, and not have to do all the grinds on stream. Next up, while old school RuneScape is one of the largest and most well-known MMORPGs, it's not really an MMO the same way virtually all other MMOs are, which kind of are like World of Warcraft clones at this point. What I mean by that is that it doesn't really have group content the way that most MMOs do. You're not really expected to play as a group. In fact, I would say that like 99% of the content in this game is completely soloable and you can't do it with a group. And most of the content that does require a group is generally very unpopular. So, yeah, the I think the overwhelming experience of this game is to be played fairly solo, and then the MMO aspect is more of a social side. In fact, I would argue it's not even really an RPG because you have access to every single skill in the game. So you're not really specializing in certain things. You're not like a mage or like a rogue and you need to bring different ones. Everybody can do everything. And that's a really big appeal for the game and a big reason why so many people do enjoy the Iron Man style of playing the game, where it's solo self-found. You have to go and get everything, because you can get everything, but there's not really that kind of specialization element that you might see in other MMOs. So in classic WoW, for example, everybody's got like the guild enchanter or the blacksmith who has that rare recipe. You just don't really have that in old school RuneScape, because you know everybody is sort of the same, I guess, like framework of a character. And the only restriction is basically how much time did you spend actually grinding the skill. Now, I do think that a kind of fresh economy of players, so a bunch of new players who are only interacting with each other in an economy, that would be really cool, actually. And in fact, I'm sure there would be a plugin that would be able to do that. Plugins are basically like the add-ons of RuneScape. And the group Iron Man mode is actually kind of similar to that, where you have 5 people who can share like a bank and trade with each other. So it's like solo self-found, but you're in a group of 5. I think that if that was expanded to like 100 or something, that would actually be kind of cool to see a really large group of players try it out, especially since engaging in the main economy, there's just so many players and a lot of it is botted that the prices are kind of, it's hard to specialize in something when the economy is kind of as big as it is at this point. That being said, there is some pretty good content in old school RuneScape that can be done as a group. While there's not really like dungeons while you're leveling, some of the end game raids are actually really fun to do, and they can be done with groups of players. Personally, I think the most recent raid, Tombs of a Masket, would be really cool to see a bunch of new players trying it out. One of the cool things about this raid is a scaling difficulty system that lets you basically try it at a pretty easy level, and you can slowly increase the difficulty by introducing new mechanics, and that just increases the drop rate and brings it closer to the intended level of difficulty. That being said, it can only be done with up to groups of 8, so anywhere from 1 to 8 players. So this wouldn't really work for like a large, like 40-man raid like you saw in Molten Core. It's also one of the raids that I think could actually be learned by players who are kind of trying it out for the first time, if this was something they wanted to do in like a hardcore setting. A lot of the bosses in old school RuneScape are almost like a Dark Souls philosophy, where the first time you go in there, you're probably going to die pretty fast to stuff that you might not even understand, and it usually requires like watching a video or looking up a guide to sort of be able to figure out how to do it. And then once you kind of have died a couple times, and that's sort of an expected part of the learning process, then it's kind of like riding a bike. You sort of get it and can kind of keep farming it to oblivion past that. Now, there is one raid, Chambers of Zarek. I think you can have unlimited players in your raid team, which is pretty cool. However, it's pretty clear that the fight is not designed to have like 50 people in there. Trust me, I've tried it. It is super chaotic. And also, you don't really die inside of this raid in particular. You just kind of respawn and can go again. So, I mean, you could have like 100 people go and do this raid for the first time, but it would kind of feel like you're just like you're killing a gorilla by sending like millions of ants at it. Eventually, it just kind of falls over. And personally, I think the lack of group content would make it pretty hard, I think, to get a lot of new people into the game, as you know, you're just not going to see big streamers interacting with anybody else. They're just going to be basically playing the game largely as a solo journey. Maybe they'll have, their friends with notifications in the clan chat, but I don't think you're going to get that experience of seeing, multiple content creators all in like a voice chat doing a leveling dungeon together and sort of figuring it out. It is, for the most part, very much a solo journey. Now, this leads me to believe that if old school RuneScape did want an OnlyFangs plan, with a bunch of content creators coming in, you would probably need to have Jagex intervene and kind of help make that a project. Now, you might have heard that they have been working on creating official, sanctioned private servers that actually give people the opportunity to do exactly this. They would be able to create their own server with modified experience rates, different parameters that would just adjust the way you play the game and really create a streamlined, custom version of old school RuneScape for you and your friends. And sadly, that project got canceled like a month ago. So that's kind of out of the picture now. Really disappointing because I think I saw Tyler One's reaction to this, and they were really excited to do something for their community that was kind of like a private server. And I really thought that that would actually be sort of the, I guess, birth of OnlyFangs in old school RuneScape. And that seems out of the picture now because it's been canceled. So, yeah. However, Jagex has worked with other content creators in the past to kind of create these custom events or these custom servers to facilitate certain things. Just recently, we had a Deadman Mode All Stars that was run by Solo Mission, and that brought a bunch of old school RuneScape content creators in a big like PvP world where they could kill each other at any point, and they were split into teams to like basically gather resources, level up, and then get ready for a big finale showdown at the end. And while I love this event and I think it was amazing, one of the things that kind of sucked was that, me as a player, I couldn't really participate. I just had to kind of be a spectator. So it was more of a spectator event than something new to actually engage with. And personally, I think that the best thing that they could do would be to add like a new, I guess, like a boosted server that was basically 10 times the experience rate and 3 times the drop rate. And I think something like that would probably give the best chance of a large content creator guild to actually form an old school RuneScape, as well as give other people the chance to give it a try and play it out. Because I'm sure a lot of people would love to try out the game, and they're just not interested in spending hundreds of hours to grind. Personally, I would love to see just 2 parallel servers that, one of them is hardcore, one of them is normal, and they both have the boosted experience rate and the boosted drop rate, and you can't transfer over to the main game. So again, there's no problem of economy and there's no problem of being botted to shit. So that would be really helpful. In fact, this is a precedent that's already been set. Jagex has actually made like a content creator fresh start world in the past, and they invited a bunch of content creators, and it had 10 times the experience rate and 3 times the drop rate. I just don't think it had any lasting power because I think most of the content creators there were basically being paid as like advertisement. I don't think they were just there for fun. So that's why I think that kind of failed. And also because if you're just a player, you actually couldn't get on that. You had to basically just play a normal world without the boosted drop rates. Again, I've been advocating for a permanent leagues world for like months at this point. I really hope they give us a permanent leagues world where people can actually do that and engage with boosted experience rates, boosted drop rates, get a chance to actually play with some of the relics, and try to make some progress, even if they don't have hundreds or in many cases thousands of hours to sink in before they can actually engage with the end game stuff. Speaking of leagues, I do think that if there was going to be a push to get a bunch of, non old school RuneScape streamers and a bunch of different content creators to all kind of try out the game at once, I think that leagues would be like the perfect option for this by far. Again, I've been watching a lot of these WoW streamers playing. It's been really fun to like hang out and like talk in their chats and stuff. But man, I feel like so many of them haven't really got into the real grinds yet. So I think it's giving people a bit of a false expectation of how grindy the game is. Because like before level 50, honestly, that doesn't even matter. It's like a drop in the bucket, And obviously I'm gonna be a little bit biased here, But I do think Leagues is just the best old school RuneScape experience by far. It's a seasonal mode with boosted experience rates, boosted drop rates, new mechanics. We got new bosses. Um, there's all these things that shake up the game. You get to specialize in a combat style, so you really get to build your own character. Last couple of leagues have been region locked, so you don't even get access to the full game. You have to choose your region and kind of plan your build accordingly. And honestly, it's super fun. I absolutely love it, obviously. And I really hope it comes back. And I would really, really love to see more content creators give it a try. I think that would be really cool to see, and I'd definitely love for that to happen. So, anyways, that's pretty much all my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. I would love to kind of see this discussion evolve more and keep pushing for more seasonal modes or more kind of alternate servers, alternate play experiences to old school RuneScape, especially now that the private server project has been completely canceled. Again, I think Jagex is willing to work on these kinds of things. So if the discussion is there, they have basically said that they are willing to work on this. And I think that's the big thing to stay positive about and kind of keep pushing in that direction. Thank you guys all for watching. I'll see you in the next video.